me say briefly, just a big overview, the way I'm approaching everything we're doing is that we've got to have economic prosperity to do anything. Education, public health, law enforcement, all of it, if we don't have a thriving, growing economy with people having jobs, if you have education, if you don't have families that have a job, if you don't have money to do the things the government needs to do unless you have people that are paying taxes. And so economic prosperity is the center. Everybody here has got some influence on economic prosperity. That's always the main thing is when people are working and humans want to work. Some of us like to goof off. We always like to get back to work and make strides and use their talents. It's the human condition. Over the years, a lot of folks been on subsistence for so long they've gotten away from that. If we have a growing, thriving economy, which we can do with the assets that we have in this state, then we can turn everything around and we'll all be headed in the same direction. I'll say briefly, these companies from around the world that I speak to say the main reason they come to South Carolina is because of the people. They say the people, they call us a handshake state, they say we're smart, determined, we give our word, we keep it, and they say it's not that way in the rest of the country. It's all over South Carolina. So we got the people. So what we have to do is connect those people with jobs, with work. Because without that, they're not going to prosper. Everybody's got a part of that. We need to have education reform. Some of that's going to cost money. Some of it's just going to take reorganization. Workforce training. I urge everybody in the room, if you ever get a chance to go stop by North Charleston and see the new South Carolina Aeronautical Training Center that the Tech Center has down there. You all stop by and look at it. It's amazing. Go up to where's the Bass Manufacturing Center, the Tech School in Greenville. You won't believe what's going on. But that's right at the center of what we're trying to do. Because we got, I think, somewhere between 64 and 70,000 good paying jobs that are looking for people. That's a very unusual situation to be in. That's where we are. So education, workforce training, and also we got, as you've probably been reading, we have a $1.8 billion surplus, more coming in than we thought. Now's the time to cut taxes. If we don't cut taxes, people will wonder what in the world we do. We don't spend every cent we get. But North Carolina cut theirs, Georgia cut theirs. Those are our big competitors. All the competition is coming to the southeast: North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, and Tennessee. That's all anybody's interested in. The north is too cold. Out in California, they're crazy. In the middle state, there's nobody in the middle state. That leaves it up to us. So we really do have a great team, got a lot of talent, and that's the direction we're heading. Now, Pamela,
Thank you.
you got 1 minute.
I got 1 minute. Oh no, oh no. So kind of in line with what the governor was saying, keeping in line with business. I've been going around the state meeting with business, trying to make sure we're keeping them happy so that we can keep growing. We have coming up this weekend on Saturday the Grab a Bag SC. This is because you hear over and over again businesses come to South Carolina, and I've heard from Commerce also that when businesses come, they want to see the state. It's beautiful and that people take pride in it. So along with Palmetto Pride, we are reaching out, and thank you to Director Sterling, who does a great job of keeping things up. We've kind of reached out to our legislators and have them competing against each other, see if we can get more people out. It's happening this weekend. There's been a lot of hype and buzz around the state, so I'm very excited. I think it's going to roll out really well. Also goes along with floodwater commissions. That's been a big issue to the governors. And, with one thing we learned is that when our ditches and our canals get clogged with debris and litter, that we can't move water out. And so that goes hand in hand with this also. Also been sitting at the State Workforce Development Board, and Director Elf has done a great job. Everybody, Don Tomlin, coming out of that meeting was our need for more apprenticeship programs. So we are in the process of regionally putting together some apprenticeship symposiums. We've been hearing this from business, that business is really looking for that. They need the word passed out to the young children, you gotta get them working. And so we're gonna handle that regionally around the state because it's really important to get guidance counselors and superintendents, local superintendents involved. Because if we don't get them involved, no matter what we do at a state level, we're not getting the word down to the kids that need to be inspired by it. So that'll be starting, and I'm working in conjunction with the South Carolina Manufacturing Alliance to help kind of put that together. And also sitting on the Early Childhood Study Committee. And that is rolling along really well, looking at what the best way is to enhance education, because as the governor said, we have to fix education, we have to be bold, and this is the time to do it. And so we are trying to target early childhood education, make sure that we're utilizing those funds in the best way to give our kids a great head start. And so a lot is happening there. We have the Census Committee. The governor has asked me to chair that committee. It starts in 2020, but we're starting now. Christy Petrone is handling that, and I'm sure she's talked with all of you. The governor's office, getting the word and getting the coordination going, making sure we get everybody counted. That's a huge initiative, making sure that children, our elderly get counted. They use most of our state resources. If they're not counted, then we're not getting the proper funding from the federal government. So we've already had one meeting on training. We have a lot of groups around the state involved. So we are counting on that being a huge success starting April 2020. We held an urban transportation summit. We held it here. It started out to be a roundtable. It got so much attention that we turned it into a much bigger event. SCETV covered it, bringing transportation, public transportation in, because business was saying they needed help with that, getting people to work. And so we brought in public transportation from all over the state. We brought in business, we brought in healthcare, and we all sat down and tried to figure out where everybody's challenges were. Christy Hall had representatives here from SCDOT. It was a huge success. We've now pushed it back to the chambers so that they can kind of keep the ball rolling with it to make sure the business stays happy with what we're doing to try to get workers to them.
Thank you very much.
Can I do a minute? I didn't get the hook.
Chief, I know you gotta go somewhere in a minute, if you'd like to go ahead, please.
Yes, sir, I will. Governor, Lieutenant Governor, again, I just want to say that we have some good news, obviously, with 2018 crime stats, but it's kind of mixed. We had a 2% decrease in violent crime, which was, what we wanted. We had a 4% decrease in property crime. That's 5 consecutive years that we've seen a decrease in property crime. Enforcement murders, we got a 5-year high in murders, 393 this past year. We also saw a 16% increase in assaults on law enforcement officers this past year. So those are not good things we want to see. Requests for our services at SLED continue to increase, especially with crime suppression in areas of gun violence and special events. Fiscal year 19, Governor, our agents work 64,127 hours on special events and crime suppression. That's over and above their normal responsibilities. They do. It's a 600% increase from the same hours that we worked in 2013 on special events and crime suppression. So we get more and more requests for that. We saw the same thing in our forensic lab, where requests have increased as well. In 5 years, the lab completed over 112,000 cases consisting of 400,000 individual items of evidence. Again, it represents a 22% increase in total lab cases received by SLED, 28% increase in requests for analysis, and a 9% increase in the number of individual items of evidence that was submitted to us over the last 5 years. And the last thing I want to talk very briefly about is the search for Nevaeh Adams. As you know, this was a case that happened August the 5th in Sumter. Sumter PD worked this case. We had a 5-year-old that was missing that we believe had been put in a dumpster in Sumter. Had gone to the Sumter transfer station, and we believe her body had ended up in the landfill at Screaming Eagle Road. This was the same time that Hurricane Dorian we were dealing with, but needless to say, I contacted you, your office, and you supported us in every which way that you could. You would be very proud of Team South Carolina and what was accomplished in this. So from September the 17th to the 21st of October, we searched that landfill. We had over 400 people on different days searching that landfill. We started usually at 6 o'clock in the morning with individuals in Tyvek suits and full respirators searching. Some days we got the heat index was 110. We had to stop by noon on some of those days. During that 25-day period, we searched over 400 million pounds of garbage. On the 21st, we found her remains, and we were able to give some closure to her family. Again, I could tell you, you could not be prouder of Team South Carolina. Of course, the SLED participated. The Department of Transportation, Christy Hall and her folks did a wonderful job. LLR, firefighter mobilization, we had over 26 fire departments that provided personnel. They worked over 1,700 hours on this particular event. The longest event, firefighter mobilization, largest and longest event they've ever worked. State Forest, we provided our incident management teams. DHEC provided all our vaccinations because everybody had to be vaccinated, hepatitis and tetanus before they went in. So DHEC provided that. The 43rd CST team provided decontamination, did our mask fitting for us every day. Were there to help us with our air quality monitoring. Richmond County EMS, Richmond Coroner's Office provided anthropologists to us during that cold period. That many sheriff's departments provided security for us around the clock there. And I could go on, but I just say that, again, when I look at the events that we participated in, I can tell you that in my 42 years of doing this, never before have I participated or do I know of anything like that where the size of the search that was taking place at that landfill. I cannot explain to you in this room. You have to go there, be on the ground there to understand the immensity of what it was that was accomplished. I've flown over that landfill probably hundreds of times, and you have to step foot in it to understand the immensity of that place. And so I just want to tell you, Team South Carolina's alive and well. I know we've had floods, we've had hurricanes, but I can tell you that the work that was done during this period of time, in my opinion, was far greater than anything that we've done thus far. We feel that there's nothing to be said.
Any questions for the chief before he goes?
Well, again, it's all the folks that worked, and we're just thankful for that. I'm going over to doing a debriefing today at Sumter, and that's where I'm headed. Hate to leave, I know I took a lot longer than 2 minutes to go.
Lieutenant Governor, I'll be brief. Again, cell phones, asking the federal government for a hearing to the Cell Phone Jamming Act. I want to thank you for your calls to the federal delegation to get that legislation filed. Now we need a hearing. Our numbers are actually down, particularly heading the new full body scanners that we have, our detection technology, cutting back to education, but all it takes is one, as you saw in the pictures on Friday, at the press conference with the sheriff and SLED and grand jury and others, and the guy that's in prison for dealing drugs, dealing in prison, dealing drugs. We've had murders ordered. It's the number one public safety thing I think we have, and we can shut it down. We're working with the FCC. We're hoping to had a call with them last week. I had a call with them this week talking about technology. Our recidivism rate is down to 21.2%, which I think is probably we're in the top 5 before. I would assume we're maybe moving up even higher than that. So maybe we'll make the college playoffs to get the top 4. With that, that is in large part people around this table. We've got HHS, we've got DAS, we've got DO, workforce training. I saw a stat a while back that said that people that are going through the managed program, the DO program, 70% have paid a tax within a year of leaving, which is amazing. So I think a lot of the folks that come out, if they get the proper training, and with both your administration's, money for, reentry, we opened up for our level 3 or maximum folks, for those who've been there the longest, with 2-year reentry program. Other thing that we're doing is I think this is gonna be transformative for the department, our classification system, which is where you're housed while you're at the department, you're at a maximum, medium, minimum security is going into effect in February, and we are going from roughly about 6,453 folks to, in maximum units, 2,261. That's the estimate right now that we're doing. We're overclassifying our folks. Our medium folks are gonna go from about 2,200 to about 5,700, and our actually minimum folks and our medium folks they're gonna stay about the same. We'll have a lot more people to go around the state doing our trash, and working and learning skills. Our prison population is, I think, at an all-time low of 18,349. So I think that's a large part of the sentencing reform, but it's a large part of the work that folks have done around the table. Mr. Hitt, bringing in a lot of businesses that want to be second chance employers, and Director Schwedo and others, working with us to make sure that when people leave, they're employable and, they want to work and they can work. There's so many jobs out there. Lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize a lot of us served with Director Byers. He passed last week, military veteran, Vietnam War, from Camden, South Carolina. Director Adrick will be doing his eulogy on Friday. It's from 12 to 2 in Camden. His impact, DJJ and SCDC, I think will be felt for generations. His vision for the youthful offender program, which is amazing, where folks literally get involved in young folks' lives and turn their lives around. It's just incredible what he did, his vision. I know he's going to be missed. I just want to recognize his work for us.
He's a good man. Question, are we making, the FCC, are we still fighting the battle with them about whether to block those signals, or are we still doing, are we making progress on that, or do we have better devices?
No, yes and no. What we need is the FCC's opinion is the federal law, that we cannot block. It's the law from 1934, which I've said in jokingly is the most forward-thinking Congress ever, because they decided we couldn't have a cell phone in 1934 in Janet. But working with the FCC on some solutions, I think they're putting some pressure on the cell phone companies, but we really do need a hearing. I want to have Captain Johnson, I want to have Jared John's family, he's a military veteran, who they were scamming using cell phones, and the investigation was so sophisticated with technology, they were able to find out the second that he received a phone call because he had an Apple Watch on, the second his heart stopped and killed himself. 2 inmates from Lee have been charged with that murder, and that's where we have our managed access system, which is very disappointing. So I've said that the managed access, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I know if you just close the door, shut all the windows, and shut things down, it makes it a lot safer for the folks inside and a lot safer for the folks outside. Until we have that hearing, I think we're kind of stymied, to use golf term, and that's kind of where we are. So we're having to use a lot of resources, a lot of tax dollars to try to stop these phones from coming in. And we continue to arrest people for it. People just continue to make dumb decisions and bringing it in. It's just amazing.
Questions, comments?
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank March Adams and the Department of Administration. We just recently moved from 222 Vine Street, whatever the address is over there. And we're now at 293 Greystone. It's a very nice building. I want to thank March and her staff for all the work that you all did in not just selling the building, but helping us find a location that we're really happy with. And so we're now at 293 Greystone. And also, Marcia, your efforts in helping us with the IT move and all the things that are involved in that process is a lot of work. And so I just want to thank you and your staff for doing that. We're very happy to do that. I just wanted to kind of mention very briefly, as we are talking about criminal justice reform across this country, Triple P stands ready to take on any and all offenders that we want to have in the community versus the prison system. So we're really working hard, preparing, and we're doing different strategies. We're not just supervising people like we did in the past, we're actually putting a lot of effort and strategies in identifying the types of people and the needs that they have. So what I'm saying to you is that as we continue to reduce the prison population, bring people out of the system, bring them to us, we stand really ready to address their needs. We're just doing a partnership with mental health to make sure that we bridge that gap between what's going on in the prison system, what's going on in the community. A lot of the folks that come to us come straight from the court system. They don't come necessarily from the prison system. Most of the people on probation come straight from courts to us. And we want to make sure that we have that mental health assessment tool to make sure that we're identifying what their needs are, and that's why we're partnering with mental health. And that's a pretty big gap, and I think that we're going to close. So we're pretty excited about that. So my point is, as we continue to reduce the prison population in South Carolina, Triple P stands ready to take on that responsibility. And we're going to have our agents really trained up in a different way to handle different types of needs that we know that they have. So we're pretty excited about that.
There's any questions? Doesn't look like Christy Hall's here. But I would say something that she did. We had y'all might have read about it as a National Scenic Highway 61 runs west of Ashland, 6 miles of, it had some traffic accidents. The standard procedure is to go out and to cut down the trees, eliminate the possibility of collision with people with trees. And so we studied it, the commission and Christie's leadership studied it up and got the data, and it turned out that rumble strips widening the road just a little bit and put rumble strips on the side and one in the middle to keep people from going straight in the curves and running off the edge of the road and all. It wasn't trees, it was trees. So we ended up going for 280. There were all kind of folks in the area down there, the environmentalists, historical people, tourism people were adamant they were ruining this canopy. If they did what was usually done. And so instead of just saying, well, how many we got to cut in order to save people from themselves and how to drive and speed and all that, we started looking at what we got this beautiful thing, how can we make it more safe, and ended up from 289 trees being cut to 2. So everything worked out as be perfect. You think we would have to put a statue up somewhere.
Governor, Lieutenant Governor, good morning. My name is Robert Bowles. For those of you who have not had a chance to meet, I'm the Director of South Carolina DNR. Alvin Taylor, our longtime agency director, retired in May after 42 years of public service. I'm pleased to be here to speak on behalf of the department this morning. Governor, just a couple of things I'd like to bring to your attention. We're very proud of the fact that to date, this calendar year, we've been able to set aside over 3,600 acres for conservation and wildlife habitat here in South Carolina, from the mountains to the sea. And one thing that we're particularly very proud of, I'd like to share with you and the group, is that this year we've seen a record of the number of threatened sea turtles that come back to South Carolina to nest every year. 8,798 turtles nested on the beaches of South Carolina, from McCluskey to Wades Island. We've had a lot of people working for many years to make that happen, including over 1,000 volunteers on the coast that have contributed over 42,000 hours in terms of nest surveys and relocations to enhance our quality of life along the coast. So a lot of people pulling to help us advance the conservation ball. The earliest nesting on record, we're happy to say, was recorded this year on April 26th. So South Carolina is a great place to live and work and play, and we're very pleased with it.
Lieutenant Governor, just to talk about 3 things today. The first one is everybody's favorite, Real ID. Good news and bad news is the good news is we're still the fastest DMV in the country, with averaging this past month 7 minutes from rear to front desk, where other states are averaging hours. The bad news is that we're not nearly getting as many people signed up for Real ID as we should. We just passed the 1 million mark. and which means we've got about 25% of the population, which is higher than most other states except where it's mandatory. The negative part is if we took a straight line average of about 60 to 65,000 a month, we won't get to half the population by the time the real ID kicks in on 1 October 2020. Matter of fact, the federal government now is dealing with the fact that TSA believes and Homeland Security believes that on the 1st of October of next year, that they will have as many as 1 million people turned around every day at checkpoints. And we have on the positive side about 600,000 to 700,000 people that can renew online if they want to. They brought us their information early, or they signed up when we were collecting it all before we had the authority for Real ID. So we'll continue to push those hard, but we need everybody's help, because it's not because we're not getting the work out. Any place I go, somebody comes up and says, I'm gonna get around to it. If you wait until January, I'm telling everybody you'll wait as long as 6 hours. If you wait until next July, you may be there all day if they start to get serious about it. So we need to continue to push the idea. On the positive side, we had the Lieutenant Governor and her entire family at the DMV in Greer last week, and so we've got the poster child for Real ID, and we've got the governor and his family stacking up behind them so that we can push the big gun when we need to. The next one is today, this afternoon, we're having our legislative stakeholders meeting before we propose any legislation and bring it to the executive branch. We bring in all the stakeholders and try to knock out any issues or concerns. We may agree to disagree with certain things, but we haven't in the last 3 years. We've agreed literally on anything that we were going to take forward. We're hoping for the same thing this year, but we will have our discussions today. And finally, one of our legislative mandates is, in fact, Donate Life. We made a commitment to try to double the participation rate in 5 years. We're at the 5-year mark. On the negative side, we didn't achieve it, but we have increased it by over 1 million. And by this time next year, so in 6 years instead of 5, we will have doubled the participation rate and saved a lot of lives as a result of the Donate Life push.
How long did it take you to get?
Seconds. Like, it really was short. They did a great job.
Rick Smith.
Lieutenant Governor, staff, and fellow directors. We are seeing a downward trend in terms of traffic fatalities. As of today's date, we're at 844 traffic fatalities. At the same time last year, we were 906, which is a difference of -62. So we would like to see that downward trend. Working, Governor, with the opioid emergency response team. Our enforcement troopers and officers continue to be trained to administer Narcan to individuals who have overdosed on opioid. Nearly 500 troopers and officers within DPS have been certified through DHAC to administer Narcan. And Governor's goal is to certify at least 750 troopers and officers around the state. Narcan has been administered, and 4 incidents so far, and 2 I would like to talk about briefly. The first one was a trooper who conducted a traffic stop. The passenger was unconscious. The trooper administered the Narcan, and the individual was transported to the local hospital. The second incident, trooper was at a local store. Trooper called the nearest trooper to the location. Nearest trooper responded and administered Narcan to a subject who had overdosed on some type of unknown substance. And that individual was subsequently transported to a local hospital. So it's working. And our thing was, even if we save one life, the training is well worth what we were doing. We want to have the bodies, the troopers around the state. Because at any given time, something could happen, and we're probably minutes away from the incident. Next thing I want to talk on is just stress management and wellness training. Governor, the daily job stress can have a significant impact on our employees' health and possibly affect them professionally as well as personally. So in January of 2020, all of our troopers, officers, dispatchers, and the executive staff members will go through this training. We held our first stress management training earlier this year. And things that we would cover would be nutrition, ways to cope and combat stress, exercise, threats facing law enforcement, suicides, alcohol use, and family issues. Again, that mental health wellness is very critical, especially with our officers who are in the high stress job.
Okay, thank you very much. Kim Stimson?
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir. Couple things, it is with great pleasure to announce that hurricane season will end in about 2 weeks. So, we've got that going for us, but yeah, that ends in 30 November. But we're already starting to plan for next year's operations, to include your annual tabletop, that we'll schedule sometime in the spring with your folks. And what we wanna do is probably focus on the re-entry piece of it. We had a pretty, uneventful event, I guess, in terms of Hurricane Dorian, and we didn't have a whole lot of damage, and I'll cover that here in a minute. But re-entry is certainly a big deal, especially for businesses and everybody getting back to their homes. So we want to kind of emphasize that. We'll be moving into winter weather operations. Just recently developed and distributed a new winter weather response plan. And just as an aside, one of the biggest disasters we've had in South Carolina in recent years was the ice storm in 2014. It was very significant. Matter of fact, it was the most expensive one in terms of public assistance and every management. Second most disastrous one. So we'll have Winter Weather Awareness Week, first week of December, and we'll push basically what individuals can do in terms of the personal preparedness and that pretty much what you do the same for every event is on the personal side. You just need to push that. You need to have your own personal plan. You need to have what you need to be without electricity for a period of time. You need to be able to stay connected to radio, battery operated, that sort of thing. So we're going to push all of that. And then right now for Hurricane Dorian, we've estimated that the cost on that is about $41 million, and that'll change over the next several months as we validate some of those numbers. But it's looking to be about what the costs were for Hurricane Irma here a couple of years ago. And then in terms of actual after action reports for Dorian, those are ongoing right now. As a matter of fact, we'll have one tomorrow, and then I'll get several scheduled in the next couple of weeks. But so far, we've identified no systemic failures in terms of our operation during Dorian. One area that probably we need to improve on, though, is that's the evacuation compliance rate. We're about 50% on that, so we probably need to do better there. And then certainly areas contributed to success. Our comprehensive evacuation plan that PPS and DOT have put together, it's been validated once again during this last operation. And then also our disaster intelligence system that we stood up a couple of years ago, which helps us make those decisions and better advise you during operations. Subject to any questions you might ask, that's all.
I just make the observation, anybody, I hope we don't have any more hurricanes, I know we will, but if you want to see a good example of communication, collaboration, and cooperation, a lot of talent, we've got the emergency division, while we're thinking something, next,
Governor and Lieutenant Governor, I want to thank many of the folks who were in this room for helping on board this new agency that started on July 1st, the Department of Children's Advocacy. When that department started, 3 divisions that were previously within admin came under the Department of Children's Advocacy, the Guardian Ad Litem program, which is primarily made up of volunteers who serve as child court advocates for children who are involved in abuse and neglect cases. And then the Foster Care Review Board, which oversees and reviews cases for children who have been in foster care for more than 6 months regarding permanency and placement. And then Continuum of Care, which offers case management of high fidelity, quality, wraparound, intensive services for children in their homes to try to avoid children entering psychiatric residential treatment facilities or hospitals, and which tries to transition children back to their communities when they've been in those types of placements. So the beginning part of the work on July 1st was trying to strengthen those 3 divisions, trying to determine what types of vacancies there were, what type of needs there were, and of course, we identified that what those folks needed, I think, was just an intentionality and a focus on child welfare work, and then training and onboarding and recruiting and supporting of their work. So, for example, with the Guardian Ad Litem program, we started a peer coach mentoring pilot program in Greenville County to try to take seasoned guardians and try to help support new guardians as they're being trained. Simply put, we needed to do something fast, and we needed to do something that didn't require extra state dollars or resources, so we used what we had. We used volunteers who were emailing me constantly saying, what can we do to help? And we said, well, we have some ideas. So been traveling all over the state, meeting with staff, meeting with volunteers, trying to re-energize them, trying to ask them to help us out where we have some shortfalls. The other part of this is that this new agency oversees, to some extent, 9 other agencies. And so we started a 1-800 number and a way for folks to submit online complaints. We built a website. Those 9 other agencies have been incredible about posting our information on their websites. We started taking calls on July 1st, even though we didn't have a complete staff. We just started doing it. We received about 500 phone calls. I've talked to about 458 of those folks. I think we've helped a lot of people, and I'm excited about continuing to work with those agencies to try to coordinate the services that we have, to improve communication, to help folks navigate through the system. Sometimes the reason why they're calling and the situation they have is because they did something wrong. And so just trying to explain that to them in a compassionate way and trying to explain what the process is and that what's happening to them is absolutely normal and part of policy. Some of the folks that are calling, I think, gosh, that sounds really, really like a bad situation. So reaching out to partners and trying to build relationships and strengthen relationships with other agencies to try to help folks feel like they're getting excellent customer service from the state agencies that serve children.
Thank you very much. For those of you who need inspiration in losing weight or something, that's Freddie Pugh minus about 100 pounds.
I thought you were going to talk about me. Okay, all right.
Keto. Good morning, Governor, Lieutenant Governor. But you didn't tell them I didn't lose any brain power.
That's right.
Governor, briefly, a few things that are going on at the Department of Juvenile Justice. The first thing that will probably be of interest to you and your staff would be Raise the Age and the impact that it's had on the state. As of October 31st, there have been 746 17-year-olds who've been introduced to the juvenile justice system. That's out of 4,000 referrals since July to October 31st, 746 of those referrals were 17. In placement, 17-year-olds at the time of offense since July 1st, 55 out of 531 17-year-olds have been placed in DJJ placement. And as far as detention, 17-year-olds who were 17 at the time of the admission of their crime, excluding probation violations, 160 have been placed in detention across the state out of 913. At the DJJ Detention Center, 17-year-olds have been 103 out of 552 since July. So our average daily population at the detention center is 72. We're constantly over that number, so we're using portable beds to house that population. The way it works, as long as our average daily population does not continue to exceed the 72 beds, that we can still maintain as long as we're getting them out, and it's not, our average daily population is over 72. Some weekends we may be at 90, some weekends we may be at 68. It just depends on how young people are acting. But we're using portable beds to try to account for that ebb and flow of that population. We're hopeful, as everyone in the room knows, and of course you know, Governor, that we've been working very closely with Senators Seeley, Martin, and Malloy, and Hutto on this juvenile justice reform. In fact, there's a meeting going on right now that I got to get to. We're going through the reform packet. And so with that, we're hopeful that the numbers of young people who are removed from home for confinement will be decreased. We're hopeful that with that, the cost to the taxpayers will be driven down as well. We're continuing to struggle with the mentally ill population. Today I have 17 young people behind the fence who are severely mentally ill. It's trying times, and we're working with Ms. Whittle and Director Binkley, and we're going to be reaching out to Director Baker trying to drive that number down because again, there's so many issues that come out of having that population insecurity environment that we really need to work on. But another thing that I'd like to bring to your attention beyond reform is we're continuing the path of regionalization, trying to get these young people closer to home. You know, a lot of the directors have already spoken about getting folks to work and being gainfully employed, and you yourself, Governor, talked about the wonderful opportunities here in the state, and you're right, and I can tell you firsthand that we feel the impact of it, you know, because things are so good in South Carolina, because jobs are so plentiful. It's hard for me to hire folks to go into the correctional field. Law enforcement as a whole is already struggling, but because manufacturing is doing so well in this state, those opportunities are plentiful. And I applaud you and your administration for that, but it's really causing us to have to think out the box to get folks in. And so we're working hard to get that done. But with that, we believe with regionalization and reform, we can probably manage our population with the same number of staff that we currently have because numbers will be driven down. And ratios will improve because we'll have less young people to put eyes on. And lastly, a bit of good news that I'm very proud to share with you and everyone in the room is that we applied for a grant from Duke Endowment. Because what we noticed is that there was a number of young people in this state who were between the ages of 17 and 21 who were homeless. If they're not homeless, their conditions at home are very bad. And so we've been working with that population, trying to get them educated, trying to get them employed. But the problem is when they go back home, they struggle so much because of their environment. So we met with the folks from Duke and asked for money for transitional housing. Help us put these young people in a place where we can put hands on them for a little while longer. And last week I got the letter from Duke. They're giving us $418,000. They're going to give us $209,000 this year, $209,000 next year to help with that transitional housing. So hopefully we can show some fidelity in that and we can continue that long term. So, thank you.
Question?
Good morning, Governor and Lieutenant Governor. During my first 6 months, I visited over half our county offices and plan to visit the remaining counties in the coming months. I've spoken with hundreds of staff in person, via telephone and email, as well as heard from over 1,000 community members, partners, and foster parents through our many community forums and town halls that we're hosting. I've learned that we have a lot of work to do to improve our services to children and vulnerable adults. I also have learned we have some committed, passionate professionals at DSS that are going to continue to help make the system transform into something that we're proud of. We serve 1/6 citizens of South Carolina, so we end up interacting with a lot of folks. We have seen an increase in our adult protective services numbers and our child welfare numbers, whether that be investigations, family preservation, or foster care. A lot of that has to do with increased awareness of how to call in hotline referrals, us accepting hotline referrals, and that there is a lot of abuse and neglect going on with children and youth and vulnerable adults across the state. A couple of highlights from some of our programs. In our economic services work, our Healthy Bucks program, which is an incentive for SNAP recipients to encourage them to eat more fruits and vegetables, is already outperforming last year's Healthy Bucks performance by over 20%, with still 2 months left in the year. Our adult advocacy division, again, who has seen a huge increase in vulnerable adult population that we're working with, is working to develop short-term stabilization beds so that when we do bring a vulnerable adult into our custody, that we have an appropriate place to serve them. We developed an employee trauma support program involving the analysis of the organizational stress and culture. Like Director Smith said, this job is extremely difficult when you are witnessing abuse and neglect, you're hearing about abuse and neglect, and the stories that go along with that. And so we have to make sure that our workforce is supported with a proper culture of safety and some of the things that help reduce some of the trauma and stress. PACS and our statewide disbursement unit are now operational statewide and have received federal certification. You guys have all received an invitation a celebration, because that has been a long time coming for PACS. We've already seen an increase in the amount of child support monies coming into that, which means more families are getting money to support their children. On the child welfare side, we're overhauling a lot of that work. First thing was just try to understand where our federal dollars were at. We've seen a 10% increase in our 4E penetration rate, which means more federal dollars will be coming into the state to support our child welfare agency. That's been a huge focus on the front end, is just making sure that we have the dollars to do this work. Secured no-cost technical assistance to work on our safety systems analysis. Secured almost $500,000 in private grant funding to work with 3 crucial areas of child welfare. We finalized our federal program improvement plan, which has been 2 years in the making. So that's been finalized. We rolled out our child abuse referral intake tool November 4th. And so we're working through that to make sure that we're appropriately screening in and screening out referrals. And I'm excited about working with USC in developing simulation labs for as a training for our investigation staff, which basically is moving from sitting in a classroom to having real life scenarios where they're out in a house learning how to do this work. So that's exciting. This month is adoption month. We have 80 adoptions scheduled on the 25th of November. That means 80 more young people are going to have forever families. And we are continuing to work through the Family First Preservation Services Act, which is a federal mandate. We've delayed that for 2 years. And 39 other states have done that. Congress has a new bill out there that hopefully will make it easier for the 39 states to enact this, because we believe preservation and supporting families on the front end rather than foster care is the way to go. So, and I appreciate many of the other directors in this room for their support in helping me get through the first 6 months here in South Carolina. So thank you.
We can sit down for about 50 minutes, so like everybody who wants to stand up. Right away.
Go down to do something.
It'll be a problem. Is that Ken down there?
Yes, sir.
You here for the gentleman?
Yes, sir. Governor.
Something to say, Ken Wright?
Yes, sir. Lieutenant Governor, on behalf of General McCarty, who is currently at FORSCOM up at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and I promise you, I did not get the short end of this deal. We currently have over 1,100 South Carolinians deployed worldwide and here in CONUS. Phil's going to bring up some information for you and the Lieutenant Governor. The first thing is a photograph that was taken this week. It shows some of our troops deployed in northern Syria. The first vehicle and the last vehicle are 2 Bradley fighting vehicles that belong to 4th and 118th Infantry out of Union. They have a little over a platoon plus of Bradleys and some other folks currently on operations in that area. We currently have here in the CONUS in the United States about over 65 personnel. In Europe, we have over 25 personnel. And over in CENTCOM, Southwest Asia, we currently have just under 1,100 personnel supporting the fight. In addition, we continue with our operations here in the state to prepare to support the state agencies and the counties in the disasters and emergencies. We work closely with the EMD and the state agencies in determining what they need from the military department to do their job and support the state.
Thank you very much. 1 minute. Excellent.
Governor, yes, sir. Really, the major update to share today is your number 1 priority for the agency, which is the community engagement demonstration waiver to have individuals receiving public assistance through the Medicaid program who are able to seek employment, education, or otherwise engage their communities. Your engagement, Governor, has been instrumental in pushing this waiver along for the last 6 months. We verified yesterday that we are complete. Questions have been answered. The waiver is on the administrator's desk for approval, and we just need that final check to get forward. And I know your focus has been on agency cooperation. I would thank Director Goldsby, Director Sterling, Director Adger, Director Leach. This will be true cooperation when we finally get to put this thing into operation. So thank you.
Wow. Thank you.
Governor, Lieutenant Governor, I'll be brief. I simply want to highlight and update some of the collaboration that we have with other agencies, a lot of which has been mentioned. In 2 weeks, we'll train our fourth cohort of certified peer support specialists at the Department of Corrections. DEODIS has 3 staff embedded now in the Department of Corrections to support the reentry of those inmates with addiction. A number of those inmates have permanent jobs. We've got folks jobs at Michelin, other big employers. I've met with some of those folks. So overall, a great program. We're excited to see continue. The second cohort of women in our residential treatment facilities are currently in the Work Readiness Boot Camp program that we have with the Department of Employment and Workforce. And we're excited to see that extend to our final 3 women's residential treatment programs. We met last week with folks from the National Guard's Counter Drug Task Force, your Counter Drug Task Force. General McCarty, as you know, has reengaged the Civilian Operations Unit, which we're excited to partner with once again. They're going to be an extension of trainers and educators for community prevention efforts, and we see that they can help us really leverage our efforts with local anti-drug coalitions. We're excited for that. Finally, today, DEODIS staff and VMH staff are interviewing for a position that will be a joint position between VMH and DEODIS. This person, whoever is hired, will begin on December 2nd to liaise between our community mental health centers and our local county alcohol and drug commissions to train those staffs on co-occurring mental health and addiction issues. And this is really a first step in what we aim to have as a long-term partnership working with those folks across the system.
Any questions?
Governor, if I could just say that that collaboration with VMH is excellent. And so, what you're doing with your counselors and HHS helping out is really going to be very important.
The collaboration works every time. Good.
Governor, Lieutenant Governor, give a DHEC update. I will accomplish it with less than 2 minutes. Key hepatitis A update. As of November 1st, we've had 576 cases, 62% hospitalized. The good news is for the last 2 months, we've seen the the curve actually start declining with the number of new cases. That's important from an epidemiological aspect. The 2 counties still with the greatest number of hepatitis A is Aiken and Lexington. But we continue to work and fight the good fight. Nationally, we submitted at the beginning of October an application for a national public health accreditation. Our national survey team will come in the spring of 2020. We're preparing for that. We believe that will just elevate our public health departments across the state to a better level. Stronger Together campaign. We've launched a video campaign to help heighten our strategic partnerships throughout the Palmetto State to demonstrate why we as agencies, organizations, South Carolinians, and a state are stronger when we work together. To date, we've highlighted 5 of our strategic partners: the Trident United Way, the South Carolina Lodging Association, Live Well Greenville, the Richland Library, our Spirit of Caring program. In the future, we'll feature Alzheimer's Association, the City of Columbia, the EPA for Recycling, and the South Carolina Hospital Association. Another aspect of a partnership is working with Palmetto Pride. We were looking at trying to find a way to identify illegally dumped tires, and they worked with us, and they're adopting that See It, Report It campaign. And we'll utilize their 1-800 number for citizens to be able to call in
to report where they see tires being illegally dumped. And finally, we're really excited to announce that the director of the CDC, Dr. Robert Redfield, is going to visit DHEC for a panel discussion in the epidemic regarding HIV transmissions, and he will be here on December 11th. As we get to know his schedule, we certainly will coordinate with your office for if there's an opportunity for you and Dr. Redfield to get together.
Thank you very much. Any questions, suggestions? Marcia?
Lieutenant Governor, just a quick focus on collaboration and shared services. The Department of Administration continues to negotiate statewide contracts, especially in the technology field. We have a new agency internet network contract as well as print and mail contracts, and that will save agencies $1.9 million annually. We've expanded administrative services to 10 agencies. These are 10 smaller agencies that need help with human resources, procurement, et cetera, administrative functions, saving them $500,000 a year by sharing those services with them. We continue to migrate agencies to our data center, to our shared data center. We've migrated 5 more this year, and the next up is TJJ, and I'm working with them. So that continues to save money, but also enhance security. Speaking of that, we are working on enhancing security, as that is just a continuing effort. We have standardized our email systems, and well, we're getting ready to standardize email systems. We have our standards in place. And we're also deploying a multi-factor solution for states and anyone who receives services through state IT. We have focus on HR. We're looking at the class and comp system, looking at some updates to that, and I think we'll be hearing more about that in the coming year, as well as looking at recruitment and retention and how we can work together to improve that. One more contract that we just awarded is our cloud computing contract. So we awarded the providers and the integrators, and I have to say, thank you, Josh and HHS, because they are the pilot, they are funding it, and all of us will be able to benefit from what we've learned from this pilot. And so for agencies that have limited funds, they're going to be able to take advantage of what HHS is doing. So thank you very much. That was a great collaboration effort and something the state really needed. And then finally, we continue to have some statewide projects we're working on. One, we completed the new voting system was purchased, and I think you've seen that in place and some of the voting. And then the Santee Cooper project, the proposal will be January 15th, and we intend to meet that up. January 15th.
Thank you. Brian?
Good morning, Governor. Lieutenant Governor. Very quickly, let me introduce my new deputy, Gene Westweiser. So some of y'all may put a face with the name and happens to come over in my place.
I think that's the old FBI man, right?
Correct. He was my predecessor here in South Carolina. So he had everything set up perfectly. So two things I want to bring out, and this really is to the benefit of all of my colleagues in here. One of the things about the Inspector General statute provides that I can provide confidential recommendations and advice to agencies. So I know there are 5 agencies sitting around this table with me today that have used those services. Come in, take a look at program safe meds. I need somebody to take a look under the hood. Just give me a call, and we'll come over there and provide that feedback to you. And in all those situations, it's always been very beneficial to get in front of a problem before it becomes a problem. And that's why when the legislature put that in place, they put that provision in there for me to do that. And we offer those services out of very experienced investigators as well as auditors on staff that's willing to do that and provide that feedback. The other part of that would be the type of training. We also have the ability to provide investigative training as well to your staff if they need that.
Recommend anybody think about that. That's right there, all you have to do is ask.
All I do is ask.
Emily? Thanks.
Thank you, Governor. just wanted to provide some highlights, numbers of what we're covering with the gamut that LOR covers, from state fire to labor programs to professional and occupational licensing. This past year, we did launch a new website, which is up and running. Revamped the website to make it really more user friendly. So many members of the public come to our website to really do something, apply for a license, renew it, file a complaint, etc. And so we really wanted to revamp it to make it as easy as possible. We've gotten great feedback since that was launched, as well as our new logo. For those who may not have seen it, did that in celebration of our 25th anniversary this year, to embrace those three main areas of our agency: of fire, pole, and labor. Just some highlights from last year to kind of show you what all we've been doing at the agency. We issued in the last fiscal year over 49,000 new licenses. That's a 25% increase, with about 175,000 renewals. We have served about 25,000 walk-in customers at the agency. That's a 37% increase. 80% of our investigations were completed within 125 days, even though our Office of Investigations and Enforcement received almost 900 more complaints last fiscal year. We provided 50% more OSHA 10 classes at the high school level. This is teaching high school students about general safety instruction to receive that OSHA 10 certification before they go out in the workforce. And with that, saw an 11% reduction in the number of employee and worker fatalities. At fire, we saw a 30% decrease in fire fatalities from the 5-year average during 2019. We've also had 65 confirmed lives saved from fire alarms installed through a smoke alarm blitz program that we partner with Red Cross to do. According to the Red Cross, we're actually leading the nation in the number of confirmed lives saved through smoke alarms distributed through that program. And just touching on a couple current goals that we have, we're continuing to really highlight and investing in the agency's information and security structure within the guidelines and standardizations that Department Administration has been helping agencies with. Speaking of the cooperation and collaboration of the Emergency Management Division, I'm very thankful to Director Stinson and his team to actually help the agency run a tabletop exercise of our business continuity plan. It's easy to get lost in the day-to-day programs that we have, but I wanted to make sure we were prepared to serve the public should something happen where we don't have to build websites down. So they were great in helping us through that, had great discussion, so that we'll be ready to serve the public should that ever happen. We're hoping to implement a new phone system this year, which I spoke to you about previously, to provide better customer service. And we're continuing to implement our capital improvement plans out at Fire Academy in Monticello Road. Happy to say that we are just completing a huge dorm renovation. It's got over 50 rooms to rehouse the students, and that dormitory hadn't been touched in about 20 years. It's a huge renovation project there, and our fire station and classroom space. Both of those are also getting completed under budget. So great. So that's just touching on a couple of things, doing lots across those divisions.
Any questions?
Yes, sir. I think everyone is probably familiar with the expression, the check's in the mail. Well, it's true. The check is in the mail. In fact, we started sending $50 rebate checks out. As y'all recall, in May, Governor and the legislature agreed to refund $61 million of tax revenues as a result of the lottery winner in the form of $50 rebate checks. Checks are in the mail as I speak, and to more than 1.2 million taxpayers. We're sending out about 100,000 checks are being printed and mailed per day. All the checks will be issued by December the 2nd. In 1 month, we're issuing 3 times as many checks as we issued in 2018. So the process has been challenging out there, to say the least. You would think that It's a simple process, it's not. Secondly, we had set up a dedicated call center. Yesterday alone, we received over 750 calls related to this rebate checks. A lot of people want to know, some people wonder, they throw them in the trash, or they thought it was fraudulent, or didn't have a clue, why it was coming, or why didn't I get more, and et cetera. It's been an interesting exercise. On another front, state tax lien registry, I know this may not mean much to you, it was Senate bill that created an online tax lien registry. This is a big deal for counties out there. It's also a big deal for lawyers and bankers and abstractors. Up until November the 1st, 65,000 paper liens were filed with the county, and they were manually uploaded. No longer will that occur. All of that will now be inside of the Department of Revenue. It's online. You can go in there and you can see what the liens are, et cetera. So all the state tax liens are housed in the Department of Revenue, and counties are alleviated from the tax. It's a good example of going paperless. You mentioned state tax revenues, they are up, there's no doubt, things are looking good. It's going robust, healthy, the economy is a direct factor, there's no doubt about that, but I have to say, I think the Department of Revenue plays a role in some of this, what's going on through our policies, legal strategies, collection efforts, tax processing, the whole 9 yards. Just alone, the governor, you signed a law last year on the marketplace legislation. This is a big deal. Now there's an even playing field between online retailers and brick-and-mortar retailers. It looks like we're bringing in about $180 million additional revenues now than we were 1 year ago as a result of this. Appreciate your support. On another note, last note, does anybody have a clue what the South Carolina tax on cigarettes is? Come on, give me a guess. Robert?
18 cents.
57 cents. Does anybody have a clue the highest cigarette tax in the country? New York, how much?
$2.
$2 is close. What?
$5.
$4.35. Also Connecticut at $4.35. What state has the lowest cigarette tax?
North Carolina.
Where? Who?
North Carolina.
No. Missouri at what rate? Who said that? 17 cents. Absolutely. If you ever go to Missouri, you're going to see white vans all over the place. What they're doing is people coming in, they're buying their cigarettes at 17 cents and driving straight up to New York and Connecticut and selling big time on the market. Anyway, I bring up all this because there's been a big change in how we collect cigarette tax out there. The excise tax on cigarettes. Now, until this year, there were 3 states that did not use cigarette tax stamps. North Carolina, North Dakota, and you guessed it, South Carolina. Now, when you buy a carton of cigarettes or individually got a stamp on it, the stamp will help make sure we're not doing contraband on 9 yards. It's a better way to go. A legislature passed this. My auditors, you probably don't think Department of Revenue, but I had tobacco auditors out there. We gave retailers 8 months to get the old cigarettes off the shelf. Trust me, they have not gotten them off the shelf. I have a closet, a room the size of half this room, full of millions and millions of cigarettes that we've collected as contraband over the last 2 months. I'm doing everything I can to help the retailers, but if you're going to sell cigarettes, you're going to have to have a stamp, and we're going to be out looking forward. This is a big deal also. Bring in cigarettes, bring in about $150 million a year cigarette tax. So anyway, those are the things going on in the Department of Revenue.
Number one, I got my check for $50.
Good deal.
Let me just tell you, it's very stressful to get a letter from that. $50 didn't make up for stress.
Hey, Bobby, Leroy's got a class for you, brother.
That's what I was thinking, might come over. Activity this year has been consistent with previous years, but a large percentage of our projects seem to be sort of stuck in the middle of the decision-making process. international activity is stable, but is more sensitive to the uncertainty than probably our other domestic companies. So people are waiting. This is normally the kind of activity we have in an election year. We're having it in the year before an election year, so I believe we'll be in this boat. Majority of our projects now, as they have been for several years, are becoming more of what small and medium size, or we call them base, singles and doubles and triples and the like. So right now we have quite a few singles and doubles. The big ones are fairly elusive, and none of our competitive states are landing anything. Well, we're all in the same boat. A lot of companies have made investments in the last 2 years and are still ramping up operations. I've met with BEA and we talked about what we see in our data compared with them. So we're still seeing the impact companies coming online that we've recruited over the last 5 years, and impacts we're having on job creation and other issues like that. So it will continue, but it should hit a plateau would be our instinct. But it's also an opportunity for us to look around and see what we should be focused on as well. And so we're trying to remain ready for continued success in the future doing new activities. One of the things I'm happy to tell everyone is when I came into the department 9 years ago, I inherited a cardboard box full of all the documents on our state railway. Most people don't even know we have a state railway. It's actually a very profitable operation, about 20% return. And right now we're getting ready after in our 12th year to initiate the building of a new major rail yard for South Carolina, which will be intermodal dual rail facility on the Old Navy base in Charleston in a brownfield that will be adjacent to the new Leatherman terminal at the Navy base. Our project should be, most people don't know that's the rail is the Division of Commerce. I didn't know either until they handed me the box. And I started going through it. At that time we had 18 lawsuits engaged governor. We now have none. We had a pretty interesting relationship between the folks in Charleston and North Charleston. And even though I'm a downtown boy, I managed to make peace with the mayor of North Charleston because I was wrong side of the dog. Anyway, the railroad is ready to commence, and we will actually be socializing some of it this week. This whole process will come before JDRC and SFAA in January as we commence to borrowing money from the federal government to build it. This agency's never had a state appropriation. The rail yard is about a $300 million appliance. It will last for, I suspect, 50 years. And so as we start to kick this off, I'll have a lot of staff from various offices, including yours and others in Charleston tomorrow to get fully briefed by Jim Newsom. The port and the rail are working together on this like a big clamshell, come together right at the point of the rail. And what this will do is allow us to start out pulling probably 2 10,000-foot trains a day out of Charleston. That's about 2 2-mile-long trains. That will reduce our truck traffic, our rate of growth. It will have a big impact. More importantly, it will speed up our logistics system, and I believe that what we're doing with the port and the rail together, all of this is one operation, works pretty seamlessly. Is one of the reasons we've been so successful internationally. We are very active and reliable for state logistics. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. Amy?
Good morning, Governor. I apologize to Stephen Clemson as the just a quick update. We are wrapping up our first season with British Airways flights from London to Charleston, which has been a huge success, so much so that they have renewed the upcoming flight season through October. And an interesting note, Charleston is the smallest destination in the continental U.S. that BA flies to. Short-term rentals, Airbnbs, VRBOs always made interest in the tourism industry. We have started to track occupancy and average rate statistics for this market as we've been doing hotels for decades, and we'll be releasing that data in January. We are wrapping up our fall advertising campaign, which has been a tremendous success, trying to get over that hurricane hangover, as we call it. And despite Hurricane Dorian, we anticipate
as the, Andy takes us back to New Year or something. My dad, Andy, you never heard that. As Lieutenant Governor mentioned, we have a new head of State Workforce Development Board, our agency, essentially staffs the board and supports Don Thomas. He's been on board about 4 or 5 months now. Department reps are very involved. We have 3 programs I was going to mention real quickly. Of course, we do most of the workforce development at our agency. And one of the big issues I saw when I took over was the rural situation in South Carolina. Everybody, it's a bad situation. Every day I learn more about how bad it is. But it's bad not only for job seekers and problems they have, but it's bad for the employer. You got a good employer in one of the rural areas, the difficulty they face in getting employees, even if they are one of the top employers in the area, is very, very difficult. So one of the things we're looking at right now, in the middle of it, is a new philosophy on training. We're not moving away from any of our old programs, the old WIOA programs, Wagner, Pfizer, that you're familiar with, that we do, are all state. We're trying something different at Fairfax, South Carolina, where we are picking an employer who's hiring. We're only going to do this training if we know there's going to be jobs available for the people. We're only going to train people who will qualify for a job at this company. So if you've got a criminal record, they won't hire you. If you're not going to pass a drug test, or you don't have a certain level of education, you will not go into this training program. You go into all the others that we've got, but not this one. We're also trying to take transportation out of the issue. It's a huge problem, particularly in the rural areas. And we're giving a priority to everybody who lives within what we call a bicycle ride, 5 miles of the plant. If you live in that area, priority to get into the hiring. We have partnered with probably one of the best employers in the area, Scottsman Commercial High School, Fairfax, to do this. Met with them and developed a training program, soft skills, but they picked little modules that were covered in the training. They wouldn't agree to guarantee the people a job. I'm sure the employers would have been on that one, but they did agree to give them priorities. And they got a first class and graduated. They hired half the first class right off the bat. And that's half of our program. Pick the right people, give them the training that the company says they need. Now we want to follow and see what happens. So we will be comparing those people who graduated to people they hired off the streets prior to that, see how they do in terms of productivity, efficiency, quality, safety, following rules, attendance, and keeping time. So if we get a good result, we're going to try it again in a much larger sample, probably with a company going to the expansion to see what it does at that point. We're going to declare a new strategy and start using it everywhere. We've got companies that are hiring at that time. One other thing we're looking at is our manufacturers and the problems some of them are having in finding people to work. You heard the governor mention 65,000 open positions in the state of South Carolina. Most of those are not manufacturing, but there are 2,144 manufacturing jobs available as of last month in the state of South Carolina. Incarcerated, who are not working, they're not looking for work. They are completely on the sidelines from the job standpoint. 1,635,000 people. We've got 65,000 open jobs. Think of the economic impact of even filling 10,000 of those jobs would be monumental. So we're studying this and we're looking at what those people have done in the past. Filling in back in the 80s when they put in their leadership. The Japanese, what they've been doing because of their very aging population of shrinking workforce. And we're looking at what we can do at the network. Basically, came up with one of the best ideas that anybody's ever had for filling jobs. So what we're looking at is flexible scheduling, particularly on the second shift for manufacturing. If a manufacturer would agree to some form of flexible shift scheduling, what will happen? Will some of those people on the sidelines come off and apply for a job? We saw Milligan do it, as I said, in the 80s. Lee Kennedy just did it. We're trying to take her model, sort of, and apply it to pure manufacturing. Pharmaceutical plant doesn't look like what we think of as a manufacturing plant. It's not. Cooper Standard and Spartanburg have
agreed to pilot this program with us. And they were essentially setting up a mini shift, with people working from 6 to 10, which is very similar to what Milligan did back in the 80s. We had huge success that really saw a draw of women of all the sides. They're limiting the positions to 2 types of jobs that are easy to train. Obviously, you've got people working 4-hour shifts instead of 8. Your training costs are double, so you've got to pick jobs that have limited training. Anyway, we think that there's a great opportunity, and these people, the economists say between 5 and 10% of people in that sideline group will take a job if something changes attractive. So we're looking hard at that. The last thing we're doing doesn't have anything to do with workforce development. It has to do with money. We pay out a lot of money every month, as does revenue, as DSS, and a number of other agencies. And we're working with these agencies with the help of Partially for People Administration, trying to set up, we have set up an interagency fraud group where we share information about fraud. We're in a daily basis with sophisticated attempts to draw unemployment benefits on behalf of many fictitious people or on behalf of people who have not filed and are actually still working. And that what we're trying to do is come up with a way of exchanging information that we know that they do with us. They're also likely to do with something else in the state.
Any questions? That brings us to the end. Anything else, anyone wants to say needs to be said? Thank you very much. Till we meet again.